NetSparker, the developers of a comprehensive automated web security platform that includes web vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. NetSparker's desktop and cloud-based security solutions employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities and provides a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Hackers attack systems that are not patched. You need protection, but virtual patching isn't working. That's why you go patchless. Topia analyzes, prioritizes, and remediates vulnerabilities before they're exploited. Even the 0 days, all from one interface. Security gets better memory defense to complement endpoint strategy while improving overall vulnerability management and compliance. Adopt a hacker's mindset, eliminate vulnerability. Get your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/vicarious. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Learn how to conquer cloud complexity in our first Security Weekly webcast of 2021 on January 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. No, a.m. Eastern Time. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast. Check out the first one with Dr. Mike Lloyd, CTO at Red Seal, Adrian Sanabria, and myself. You can catch the archive of all our previously recorded webcasts at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Joining us for this segment is Jon Gorenflo, the founder and principal consultant at Fundamental Security, to talk about hacking Ubiquiti devices, some of my favorite wireless devices out there. Jon, welcome to Paul's Security Weekly.
Thanks. Good to be here. Excited.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here, my friend. Jon, you're a SANS instructor, from what I understand. Which classes are you teaching over at the SANS Institute?
I've been teaching the 504 since about 2015 and started teaching 560 in, I think, 2017. So those are two I teach at this point. So a lot of fun. Really enjoy that.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, I love Ubiquiti.
To the layperson, what does that translate to?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so the 504, I speak in numbers sometimes. 504 is the hacker techniques and incident handling, and 560 is the network pen testing class. So similar, but at the same time, quite a bit different in terms of what we focus on. So a lot of fun. The incident handling class gives you kind of that defender's perspective, but also the offensive. You get to see both sides of it. So we get some defensive spotlights and that kind of stuff in there, and talk about what we need to be able to do during incident response beyond just the hacking techniques that we talk about. And then the pen testing class is very much focused on just executing good network pen tests from front to back. So
the first class, you study country and Western. I got it.
And then some. I know 504 pretty well. I mean, Black Hills kind of wrote a lot of that material in the last few years. I know it's probably changing of recent time, but it's a very big survey class. A big survey class. That's a lot to do, though, Jon. I'm sure that's hard to keep up with. I would struggle with that, with everything else going around my head. But I'm sure you enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely love it. It's getting to work with people that are newer to it. I mean, that's one of the fun things about 504 or the incident handling classes. You're usually getting people that are maybe experienced in IT, but maybe not necessarily as experienced yet in security. And so it gets deeper into like the security side of all of that, which is just a lot of fun to see kind of the light turn on for folks that maybe understand technology of how it's supposed to work. And then we get into how it actually works and what we can make it do, which is even more fun, right?
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And was it 560, the other one you're teaching? So 560 is a really good class. I always like that class ever since. Actually, I have a brief story. My good friend Mark Baggett and I, back in 2000 and it was a way back machine. I think it was 2007. We're on the same CTF team for Sec 560 with Ed Scotus teaching it.
Wow!
So
nice.
Good times. And we held the record. We had actually held the speed record for that CTF for a few years after that. So that was good times.
So you didn't get tripped up at the end then, huh?
Well, I honestly, it's been that long ago, I don't remember. But it was really good. Of course, I've known Mark for a long time now, and he wrote the 573 class, which I've taught for quite a while now too.
I'm taking the 573 cert next week, so a little bit of studying.
Oh, you'll ace it. Yeah, man.
You're still speaking in numbers, Jeff. In case you're
it's a Python class.
Counting at home.
what used to be called Python for pen testers, right? Or is that the right name?
That used to be called Python. It's gone through an evolution. It started as Python for pen testers, evolved to be automating information security with Python, and there might be another name down the road for all we know, because I think that it's going under the defense curriculum in more recent history. So we'll see.
Well, 409 to your 1984.
There you go. So, John, tell us about Ubiquiti.
Yes.
Our favorite, at least my favorite Wi-Fi gear.
Yeah,
is Ubiquiti.
No, it's great stuff, and I want to start first with talking about how much I like the gear. Right, like it's I don't know, you hack the people you love, I guess, but I gave a talk on Ubiquiti stuff, and a lot of stuff we'll talk about today. But I did that DerbyCon a couple of years ago. And I had all these people come up to me afterwards, like, yeah, I'm going to get rid of all my Ubiquiti stuff. I'm like, no, don't do that, right? Just because there's some issues with the default configurations and some of the ways that they have things set up doesn't mean that you can't secure it or can't use it. Quite the opposite. I've started trying to emphasize what we can do with it, and the ways that we can learn with Ubiquiti, because it gives you a lot of like enterprise grade features that you don't get in the average home Wi-Fi router or anything like that. And you can build a pretty sophisticated lab from the network side of things for low dollar and have a lot of capabilities. So pretty cool stuff. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, kind of it's not the same way, but I mean, because Ubiquiti did have a data breach, right? But some people were talking about, well, no one should use SolarWinds anymore. I'm like, well, first, that's going to happen. Like, secondly, SolarWinds is going to be really secure after this whole thing, because they have to be, right? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And honestly, the way I kind of got into working with Ubiquiti stuff and doing some of the research was it was about the time that like teaching for SANS really started to take off for me. And you got to kind of it's hard to hold down 9-to-5 job and do the teaching thing with SANS and teach as much as they like. Without being in consulting or something like that, just because you got to have a flexible schedule like that. And I'd gone about as far as I could with the current employer in terms of them being willing to give me the time and all that stuff to go teach. And so I ended up going out on my own and put in my notice, right, gave my 2 weeks. And the week before I was supposed to start this, I had like a 3-month contract lined up, was going to start doing that and had the flexibility that I needed and all that. The CISO of the organization I was going to go do the work for was let go. And so like all purchasing stopped, right? And first contract, so I didn't have like the appropriate things in the contract to get some sort of compensation anyway, right? So then I was a week away from being unemployed, aside from whatever consulting skills I could muster and line work up for. And so I was just taking whatever I could get. So I had somebody call and say, hey, I've got this, I just need this assessment done. It's more just like an IT ops assessment. So I went in and just took a look at some stuff that included Ubiquiti and started digging into it. And it started like, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, that's really cool. This is nice, right? And like I started, I think I've heard of this company before. I remembered, actually, I think you guys talked about it on the show, back when they had the email fraud with there's like $42 million, right? So they'd a fraudster had like emailed the organization and was compromised emails. Actually, they didn't compromise emails. They had an email domain that was, I think it was like company.com or something like that. It was very generic thing, but then they claimed to be lawyers and emailed the folks at Ubiquiti saying, hey, we need you to transfer money over here. And so $42 million later, Ubiquiti figured it out. And then it was like, when I looked that up and saw the logo and all that, it's like, I remember something else in this. So I started looking for security stuff, and like relatively the same time frame, within a year or two, they'd had a vulnerability in some of their gear that was like a 17-year-old vulnerability in an underlying library. And like how do you end up with like 17-year-old libraries in a brand new product, right?
Very
and
careful.
So you start seeing these things pop up, and it's just like, okay, so they've got some issues, and like any other company, they've grown quickly, and actually their story of how they got started is pretty cool. Like, I don't know if you've seen, like, their CEO owns the Grizzlies, like the basketball team. So he's like grown quickly. He's done a lot. He started out at Apple, right? Like he idolized Steve Jobs, wanted to get into Apple and learn, do all the stuff and climb the ranks there. And he got a job doing some sort of QA, if I remember right, using wireless stuff. And it was all dealing with like airports and all that stuff, right? So it's the Apple wireless routers and all that. And he's looking at it during this QA stuff, like they just want him to run the QA tests, right? That's all. And he's like, wow, man, we could really crank up the power here. We could like broadcast Wi-Fi signals for miles. And so he takes it to his boss and says, watch this. And like talks about what he can do and how far he can shoot it. And his boss is like, that's not on your QA script. Like this isn't helping. And so he's like killing himself that first year or two to try and like impress people and all that stuff. And like nobody would take him up on this idea of taking the Wi-Fi and shooting long distance and that kind of stuff. And in fact, his first few reviews were really bad. Right? He got like 3 out of 5 or something like that on his reviews. And he like has this idea. It's like, well, I'm going to take this, so like what I can of the technology I can without like, compromising, the NDAs and all that stuff and stealing technology from Apple. But in his spare time, he started developing the Ubiquiti gear that we have now, right? And so he went from killing himself to do everything that he could to impress people at Ubiquiti at Apple, so he could climb those ranks, to doing the bare minimum he had to do to not get fired and putting all of his other energy into developing Ubiquiti gear and all that stuff. And they got his start then. They opened the company to sell long distance Wi-Fi shots for like rural communities and that kind of stuff. So wireless internet. And that's really where they got their start. And they were offering, this was probably 1/10 the price of all the other wireless ISPs in the gear they're offering, which is, how they really got, the money and the funding and all that to get going.
That, John, that explains why I always heard very positive things about their long range, long distance Wi-Fi gear. Yeah.
Yep. And it's, that's where they got their start, but they're now moving into like the Wi-Fi gear and all that stuff. But the software and that kind of stuff, the technology they've built over the past, I guess it's closer to 15 years now, really phenomenal stuff in terms of the time and how fast they've put these things together. Like their ISP software is, I think they just changed it. It's actually now free. So you can manage all of it and that kind of thing. And you just buy the gear and then manage it. It has billing and CMS and CRM and all that stuff built into it. So very cool stuff. But they had those security issues along the way. And so then I started getting into it and like, okay, so what else could be here, right? And so like I'm digging through the console for this client to say, okay, what's this? How's this work? Okay, how are these things configured? What can we do? What can't we do? How is this stuff done? And I get into looking at an individual access point, and underneath some of the settings features, there's this button. It says debug. I'm like, all right, well, I'll give that a shot, right? And I hit debug, and this window pops up, and it's like this JavaScript thing, and all of a sudden there's a prompt, and it's got like a pound sign at the side, and like it looks like a shell, right? And so like a ID, and it's like root, right? And so I've accidentally gotten a shell on an assessment where I was doing an IT assessment. It wasn't security, right? And so then I'm like, that's not bad, but not good. What is this, right? So then you start digging into it. And so I talked to one of my contacts at the company. He's like, yeah, this is great. Let's just manage all this stuff from home. And I said, wait, you manage this from home? He goes, yeah, we don't even have to VPN.
What?
Wait, what?
Yeah, and I'm like, wait. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, you go out to their cloud site, and then it connects in. You can manage all your stuff from there. And I said, well, do you guys share the password? Because I don't see multiple users set up in here. He goes, oh yeah, we just share the password, and we have a generic email that like the help desk mailbox or something like that they're using for it. It's a smaller organization, and I'm like, that doesn't seem good to me, right? So then all of a sudden, like I'm real interested now, right? Because it's all of a sudden we've got like shell access into how many companies have these devices in their environments, and so I start looking at how all this stuff's set up, and like that day I went home and like ordered my Ubiquiti gear because like I must play, right? And you get into it, and it's cool stuff. There's a lot of awesome features and capabilities, but when you get under the hood of what they're doing and how some of these things work, there's some really, really concerning stuff. Like the number of times that I've found keys or passwords or password hashes and that kind of stuff in log files on like the CloudKey, which is a management. It's kind of like an appliance that you can get to plug into and use. It's really kind of frightening. It's a common thing for them. But at the same time, some of the stuff that I found early on has been, they've actually started fixing it. And most of the stuff that I've found are things that is not terribly difficult. It's not like I kept looking for this, maybe I have to do some really interesting hacking to get this stuff or to compromise these systems. And it was just never the case. Every time I looked at something, I'd find something stupid, simple to do, or ways to get credentials or access to something. And it wasn't even like, it was those times that you tell somebody how that stuff works and they're like, well, is that really hacking? And you're like, getting access to what I maybe shouldn't get access to. Like, what do you call it? Right?
Yeah. Like I like forget my password to one of the access points and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get fancy, like game on now. And then I'm like, I got a meeting. I'm going to go push the reset button.
Absolutely. Right. And there's crazy stuff there too, like silly things like, so if you look at like their switches and their access points, for example, every device is a little bit different, but the switches and the access point are pretty similar. They're based on open work, and they push the password hash down to the system. It's a single user system, so there's actually no shadow file on those devices. Everything's in PSWD, which is let's go old school. Yeah. There's no shadow. So once you get access to the box, you kind of have all of it, and then the Wi-Fi keys and all that stuff is all in the configuration file in plain text. And so if you can get that shell, you've kind of got everything you need. But what's interesting there is like the same password is pushed out to all those devices for you to be able to SSH to the device and manage it that way. But it pushes the salt with it. Like it's the same salt on all your devices, which is just bizarre.
Is that per like management console?
Yeah. As far as I know, I've never seen it repeated anywhere.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I wouldn't put them past to have that kind of a mistake with the kinds of things that I've seen. So I try to watch it and know what the issues are, and usually I recommend people auto upgrade as much as possible. But with as fast as they've been changing things in recent times, I like to review things after they upgrade so I can make sure that certain issues either don't come back or things that I'm aware of. Just as long as you know what the issues are, you can maybe compensate for them in some other way.
Yeah, they are pretty diligent about firmware updates, even across their older gear. Like I have some 802.11bg stuff from them, and I mean, there's still, last I checked, there was firmware updates. Like maybe a few months ago, right?
That was funny. Today I logged up my started the Unified controller on my laptop. I haven't moved over to a CloudKey. Just that's what it is. And because I was trying to troubleshoot some Wi-Fi issues, that WebEx thing that I mentioned earlier about everybody going silent, I'm like, it's got to be Wi-Fi, and then nope, Wi-Fi is perfectly fine. And
while you're in there,
and it says while I'm in there, it's like, there's updates for all 4 of your APs. Why don't you do that now? And I'm like, those reboot. Kid on remote learning, on remote learning, me on a WebEx. I'm like, nope, not now.
It's amazing. Just as a side note, like maintenance now to your home network is like, nope, can't do it. Got to treat it like the enterprise networks that we used to manage or still manage today. Go, wait, what, sweetie? When's my maintenance window? Can I put in a change control request?
Yeah.
Yep. So I ordered a new Dream Machine to set up, and I just haven't had a chance to put it in yet. But like, I'm separating my stuff from the family stuff just so that I can do whatever I want with it. Because one of my big complaints about the Ubiquiti stuff is simple configuration changes sometimes require the devices to reboot. Which is a bit frustrating.
Yep. I remember having a router where I could configure that, do firmware updates and auto reboot at like 3 a.m, but I don't see that anymore. Was that like an idea that never caught on?
There's auto updates on Ubiquiti stuff. I don't know. Jeff's an old network person. Like that scares the heck out of me. I mean, I kind of got my start in the network side of things, and I like to be watching as that stuff happens because I don't trust it all to come back perfectly.
And John, you had that perfect in two ways. That Joff is both old and a network person.
Yep.
I was waiting for that to come out of your mouth, Larry.
I was thinking he's just an old person. But
hey, you know what? There's a couple things here. Still sexy, still kicking.
are we talking you or Ubiquiti now?
Oh,
Yes.
Are we talking about your age or your networking skills?
Yes.
Yes.
all of the above. All the above.
I agree.
And if you can do what I can do when you're my age, good luck to you. I'm only 35. No. All right, back at it.
So, go ahead.
No, continue, John.
Oh no, I was going to ask Larry. Like, have you looked at the Mongo database on your local controller?
No, but I'm going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no authentication necessary,
Why am I not surprised?
and it's basically the configuration file. It's everything's in there. Password hashes, plain text VPN keys. That works.
Great.
So does that apply when you start to use the the cloud key though? And
Yeah,
how the
still
controller
the same on the
software is pushed
cloud
out?
key. The difference is I don't browse the internet for my cloud key.
This is true.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was,
so hold
that
on.
was-
Stupid question. Your configuration is not stored in their cloud. It's stored on your cloud key?
Yeah, it's stored on
Mongo
your cloud key,
Gotcha.
right? So there's a few different ones out there. I've got this is one of the older ones, and like pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's just little. So it's power over Ethernet, and it just has like an ARM processor in it and a flash card right there, so it will store everything.
Yep.
Those are the older versions. The newer ones are a lot better. I picked that one up, but it's actually operational at the moment. I've got the Cloud Key V2, and so it has like a full terabyte hard drive in it because you can put your video cameras for like your network video recording, all that stuff, and feed it onto that device and that kind of stuff. But
Nice.
one of the nice things there is it's power over Ethernet as well, but has a built-in battery so that the power goes out and shut down gently. Because the older cloud keys like this wouldn't. The power went out, you might lose your entire configuration if you weren't backing it up.
Ouch.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, John, I love the cloud keys. That really solves some problems for us in the 617 class in that we needed some really good APs to support a good number of students, and we could do traffic management. And during one of so we went to CloudKeys and one of the Ubiquiti APs. To the point that one of the first times we deployed them, James Leedy Vidal was teaching class, and he didn't know it, but there was a problem with the AP configuration, and I logged in remotely, changed the configuration before the lab started, and he never knew that I did it. So, like, that was a win. That was a win.
Yeah, it's nice, right? Like, it's a huge benefit to have that stuff. But that remote access was the thing that kind of caught my eye at first, right? Because once I figured out, I went create the account, got everything signed up, and at first set it up so that I could do the remote management on my machine like that. But then I was kind of clicking around, so oh, this is cool stuff. What else can we do with Ubiquiti? And they've got this huge community with like, I don't want to call it a blog, but like forums and support channels and that kind of stuff. But I realized that when I went over to there, it was using the same account that I had created for the remote management stuff as well. And I was like, wait a second, right? And so then I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to log out of this. I'm going to log into the community site and into the, like on the forums, and then just try to go directly to the management piece and see if I can still get access to my stuff remotely. And absolutely, like no problem. Like work like a charm, right? And so I'm like, oh, right. So then I go to the account, look at the settings and that kind of thing. I get into the settings, and at that time, like the default session length for your account settings for Ubiquiti was 30 days. So if you don't log out and just close the browser, come back and within 30 days, or if somebody just gets gets access to your computer or whatever within 30 days to get to your remote network in one form or another, right? So that was a little frightening. And then I did see that there's a two-factor option, right, which was a nice benefit. Now, then I was thinking, okay, so all the forum stuff, and then it hit me, right? So I look at the forums, and if you go out and look at like their support pages or the forums and all that stuff, you pick a username, right, or a display name. Well, there's no separation between your display name and the username that you can log in with. And so then it hits me that like on their website, they have, if you've ever made a comment or whatever, there's the potential for people to just scrape the site and get this list of usernames to use against the site, then brute force and guess passwords, that kind of thing. And what I talked about on my DerbyCon talk, and I did that day, so I could give you an actual number. So it was the third username that I tried from the forums, where I took the username and just appended Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, AOL, or just a few different domains until I could enumerate that was the email that was used to register for the account. And you're like, well, how'd you know that? Well, if you go to the registration page, as you type, like keystroke for keystroke, it tells you whether that username is taken or not. And then it does the same check it doesn't do it for keystroke with email, right? It waits until it validates it as a valid email before it checks to see if it's in the system, right? So it checks based on the pattern. So you can enumerate both the usernames and the passwords via the registration, excuse me, not the passwords, the usernames and the email addresses via the registration page. And that's been that way for years, right? So when I did the DerbyCon talk, was the third username that I tried that I could then enumerate, validate that I found the email, then took the email, went to have I been pwned, and had a email address had been compromised in multiple different breaches that used or that exposed passwords, right? And so I was doing the same thing today before I came on the air, just to see how many attempts would it take before I found that person this time, and it was the second one today. Right. And, some of those people maybe are enabling two-factor and securing the network and preventing you from getting shells on all of their gear. Right. But I mean, who enables two-factor when they don't absolutely have to? Right. If you don't work in security, that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's the null set.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
So as I'm sitting here listening to the Ubiquiti story, I mean, I don't know how many times that the guidance for making things more secure at home is disable remote management. How do you reconcile that? I mean, I'm freaking out with the remote management idea. Excuse me.
So I have it turned off on mine. And if you're using the CloudKeys and stuff, you can do that. I've heard with the Dream machines that you can't do that. Now, I've not set mine up yet, so I don't know the answer to that. But there's just a configuration option where you go in and disable the cloud access or enable it, either way.
So wait, John, a Dream Machine is not a reference to like the new version of Sega Dreamcast or something like that, right? What is a Dream Machine?
So the Dream Machines are Ubiquiti has a new product. It's kind of what the second generation of their CloudKeys, which is like the management appliance, combined with their firewall. And so it's a firewall, an 8-port. The one I have is an 8-port switch and a hard drive for like the video recording, that kind of stuff for the network video captures and all that.
Yep.
It's an air fryer too, right? It's a toaster oven.
Yes.
And a coffee maker.
Does it come with Ginsu knives?
Yeah.
and Alexa, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed you didn't refer to it by the model number personally.
Yep. So John, it's like a combination between a small port switch, their USG, the Unified Security Gateway, the firewall, and their CloudKey.
Yep.
And you can get models with Wi-Fi, if I remember correctly.
I don't think the Dream. Well, yes. The first Dream Machine was like a can, right? It was about like that big, and that's just the first Dream Machine. The Pro is the. Let me see if I've got a.
The Pro has the bottle opener on it.
The Pro is the enterprise version that's rack mountable, right?
Yeah. So that's the Pro.
Yeah, there's the Enthusiast and the Pro. The Pro's for enterprise. It doesn't have the AP in it, and the Dream Machine the regular Dream Machine is the one that's more for home, that you don't have to have a separate key and switch. You want all the managed stuff without the different appliances.
Yeah. Yep. I'm looking forward to getting that up and running, because the on the side there's this little black square. I don't know if you saw it, like
yes.
But they have using the augmented reality stuff with their mobile app and your Android or iPhone phone. So then it gives you details and such about the machine, and like what plugs into what, and what's the ports are named, and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah. So
so can I plug my Oculus into it and see all the nodes on my Wi-Fi network? That'd be awesome.
that would.
It actually drops you into a world that's like in Hackers, where they're flying around and.
Right.
And you got to look, and sometimes you scroll over one of those ports and it says it's VLAN 3, and there's the garbage file.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like we need some upgrades to our Ubiquiti gear. It's always an upgrade for Ubiquiti, right? Always a firmware update and always an upgrade to their hardware.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he came from
out
Apple, so that makes perfect sense now, actually.
I mean, you look at the packaging and all that stuff, and kind of how they do that. Everything's white and pretty and pristine, and a lot of the marketing, all it's all clean and tidy. But once I learned that piece about his history, it made a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Have you looked at any of the commercial, like point-to-point stuff, like the air fiber, or any of those long distance things?
I've not looked at those specifically, like in terms of like installing them and playing with them and messing with them. But part of the research I was doing is like, okay, so there's this stuff out here. What about on the internet, right? And so you can use Shodan and search for Unify or Ubiquiti or some of the model numbers of those different point-to-point things like that, and you will find an insane amount of stuff out there. It's really kind of sad. One of the things I learned in doing the research is there are people that are have businesses doing the Unify as a service, meaning they spin up, like, I'm guessing it's just like a Docker instance or something like that, running the Unify controller software. You get the password and all that stuff to host your controller there in the cloud, and then they just set up, you set up your APs or whatever, and you control it all from the cloud, right? And so then the controller's not even in your house. You just put the AP in your house. It works. I don't know that that's how I do it, but it works.
Yeah, there's some interesting deployments with how the ISP. So the point-to-points, they have the new point-to-points that have basically power over Ethernet to plug into a second brick, and the antenna shoots to the backhaul, and essentially the power over an Ethernet plug stands up an access point in the house, which is an ISP-controlled access point that then basically double NATs and pushes a configuration down and just tunnels through that backhaul. Very interesting concept, and you can see from a rural deployment standpoint, like we used to use these all the time, and that was how we did it. They've made this very modular and very easy to use, but seeing those controllers as a service, that doesn't surprise me from an ISP standpoint. They don't want to have multiple clients or get overloaded with clients on particular controllers in different segmented regions. So I can see why that would be a thing, and that's kind of actually really scary.
Yeah, the ISP stuff is it's really simple to get that stuff up and running. Like it's another one of the things that kind of drew me to the Ubiquiti stuff to start digging into is they took all this IT stuff that is, you used to have a lot of experience to get all these things up and running, and they made it very simple to get up and going and have all these amazing features. And when you take something that's complex and turn it into really simple in the technology world, there's usually some gaps in there when it comes to security, right?
Yeah, I agree, John. And I think the reason I like Ubiquiti is because I'm lazy, but I still want some control. And so I don't want to go the Eero Google Home and give up all of the control on Wi-Fi. Because that doesn't sit well with me as a geek and a nerd. I want more control than that, right? But I'm lazy, so I don't want to build my own access points out of Linux. I think it'd be fun. Larry and I will talk about our WRT54G hacking experiences that we had some time ago. I don't know if that kind of burnt me out, but I'm I don't want to be responsible for building my own access point. And so Ubiquiti, I think, is that nice middle ground.
Nice in between.
Right, but it does come with some of those security caveats as well.
Yep, absolutely. Because it is each appliance is like a full Linux box, right? Now the switches and the access points, it's harder to get things to persist on there. It is possible, but it's harder to do. I've not released any research on that, but it is possible. You just have to kind of overwrite the certain parts of the firmware or whatever to get that to work. But at the same time, you can download anything that's compiled appropriately for the processor of those devices, and it'll work, right? So the access points.
Yeah, they ARM or.
So most of the network stuff is MIPS.
Yeah.
But the CloudKeys and that kind of stuff are ARM, right? I've not gotten that Dream Machine Pro up yet to know there, but I would assume it's either ARM or probably an Atom if it's not that, right?
Cross compiling for MIPS gives you a special nerd scout badge,
and maybe even an erection from time to time.
Yes, when you're not expecting it.
I was looking for stuff because when I was first doing the research, okay, so I can get on somebody's access point, right? Well, now what? So has some tools built in. So it has TCP dump on the access point. So
NC.
If you're
wait, what? Netcat.
Yeah,
wait,
so
let's see.
there is Netcat, but it's BusyBox, right? So it's BusyBox Netcat, which
it's a neutered Netcat.
Right. It's like telnet without telnet, right?
Telnut. I think that would be telnut.
I was going to say
telnut.
I thought you said telnut.
I like it.
Telnut. Because back to your nut. Never mind.
So I found precompiled binaries for MIPS on different stuff, and was able to download real versions of Netcat and that kind of stuff. And you put those things onto the access point. As long as you don't use too much memory, everything works just fine. What I found is if you do something that consumes too much memory on the access points, they just reboot.
Funnel all the traffic with TCP dump over a Netcat listener relay.
It would probably be okay with that.
Yeah, because they're really tuned to process packets, right?
Right. There's some tools I tried to get, I found a MIPS version of Nmap, and that wouldn't run, right? There's underlying things that just weren't.
I was going to say, it's a little bit of effort to get Nmap compiled on a regular Ubuntu system on Intel. I can't imagine trying to cross-compile Nmap for MIPS.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
God. That's when you find out that GCC is on it. Wait, no.
Yeah. No, there wasn't that, right? Thankfully.
That'd have been awesome. But no.
Yeah, so have you looked at some of the ways in which to secure some of these discrepancies?
Yeah, as best you can. Some of it you're just when it comes to source code that's putting your password hashes and passwords in logs, or you're just plain text passwords or encryption keys in logs. There's not a lot you can do other than maybe log into the system and delete that stuff once in a while. The CloudKey Gen 2s, there's no the auth log isn't enabled. So if you can brute force the SSH, and it's not logging that to file anywhere for you to collect. You can log in and use the log read command, and you'll get whatever's in the buffer, but that's it. It's not saved to the disk at all. Beyond that, I usually recommend you just disable the cloud features, right? Or the cloud management stuff if you don't absolutely need it. With the breach recently with potentially leaked usernames and passwords, it's funny arranging to get on the show to talk about this, and then Monday they announced the breach, and it's probably one of the worst breach announcements I've ever seen. They sent this email out, sent from their mail manager, so MailChimp essentially, right? And there's bad grammar in the first sentence of it. It says "Dear customer" instead of addressing me by name, because they have that, right? And every link in the email was to the MailChimp's server for tracking links and all that. And so it looked as much like a phishing email as anything else. In fact, the few phishing emails that made it to my inbox over the past 6 months were from somebody's compromised SendGrid account, right? So for me to know whether or not this is actually coming from Ubiquiti, you just couldn't. So then you went to Ubiquiti's site to try and find details on it, and they didn't have any details out on their site either. Finally, another SANS instructor because I posted something to a Slack, and another instructor sent me a link to their forums where somebody was asking the question, a whole bunch of people commented, and then Ubiquiti came back and said, "Oh yeah, that's legit."
By the way.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, and that's been the extent of what they've told us, right? I think Josh Wright was the one that looked at the email, and it said
Yes.
it may or may not have. They lost control or whatever of whatever. We don't have any information to say whether or not usernames and accesses or usernames and passwords were accessed.
Yep. And we had a cloud service that was accessed by an attacker.
Right.
Yeah.
And Josh said, that's what they said. I read it as we left an S3 bucket open, right? Something to that effect.
Yeah. Some idiot left an S3 bucket open.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's Josh.
So the two-factor piece is a big piece. I was testing that today, like turned on the cloud features and stuff to enable, disable that, and to see even if you've logged into like the community. When I tested today, and I didn't repeat and do a whole bunch of technical testing with that, but went from logging into the forums to try and switch over to do the management side, and it then prompted me for my two-factor token. Right. So even though I'd already authenticated to the site, I was logged in. It did require that two-factor token before it would let me get to the management stuff, which is, that's a positive. It's definitely something that you want to consider enabling if you have this stuff. Beyond that, good passwords everywhere. The setup process is actually not too bad because it would randomize the passwords and such for the devices as you provision them. You can change that password later, but it sets it up by default and it randomizes the password. Wasn't super long last time I did it, but it was random at least, right? It's not going to be in a dictionary. So there's that, and then you can turn on the auto update stuff. That's a big piece of it. But again, I don't know. I'm nervous about doing that. Just I have had times where I've done the updates and it rebooted and internet didn't come back up and that kind of thing. So I've left that feature off myself, but that means that I've got to have some sort of a task or a reminder to go install those updates and that kind of stuff on a regular basis.
John, can you specify the time window in which those updates happen? I don't remember inside the interface. So you can schedule it, I believe, to be. It is a scheduled auto update, right?
Right.
Yeah. Got it up.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd really like to verify updates and do them by hand, but with the dependencies these days on our routers, on our internet connection, it just feels like it's easier to have them run automatically, just because you're going to nominalize the impact on the family. I really don't plan to stay up at 2 a.m. anymore because I'm old.
Yeah.
Well, in that too, there's, from what I remember now, doing updates on Ubiquiti, there's like 3 updates. If you've got a CloudKey, there's like the CloudKey firmware.
Yep.
There's the CloudKey software.
Yep.
And then there's the firmware on all of the access points. So it's
absolutely.
Usually when I do it, like by the time I get around to doing it, and because their updates are so frequent, I usually have to update everything, right? And it's like 3 series of updates that I do in a sequence.
And if you use their switches and their USG,
it's another firmware update for those systems.
Multiple in there as well.
Oh, and it's firmware and the software in those devices. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yep.
Update once a year, whether it needs it or not.
Yep. And that's kind of interesting that I think about that, and very much in the case when you get to some of the SAN stuff, where for 617 we use the Ubiquiti Gear for the wireless course. It very much becomes one of those, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Because same thing, like doing OS updates on your teaching laptop and upgrading VMware on your teaching laptop, like you can't do that stuff like a week before class or 3 days before class, because no. And then I'm realizing we haven't taught in person in almost a year. And that stuff hasn't been out of the box in a year. Like, oh God, I don't even want to think about it. But it works. So like, do I want to fix it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Our AV gear is the same way. It hasn't been since RSA. It's been sitting in a case. Well, we haven't like pillaged from it, but the rest of it hasn't been updated in a year because we haven't taken it out of the case.
Yep.
No, it's really interesting.
Yep. So John, a little bit a diversion of a question. We've been kind of playing on our internal Slack a little game of Stump the Chump, And behind you, there's some bottles of bourbon and/or rye, and we think we've determined them left to right. Elijah Craig, Angel's Envy, Basil Hayden's. That one we haven't determined Angel's Envy which one. The Basil Hayden's is the dark rye.
Yes,
and then a whistle
pig of some kind.
Of some variety. 12. Farm stock.
So it's the rye.
Damn.
The 10-year, yeah,
10-year
that's good
whiskey.
stuff.
Okay, yep.
So, very good.
That was a fun game.
I can sleep well tonight.
Yep.
That was a fun game.
The only one that that for me anyways had really nailed down was the Basil Hayden's because the label says dark rye. It's that one color, but we could identify that. Does that mean we have a problem that we can identify those bottles from a fuzzy?
No, we had a problem. We identified them, and now we're good.
Yes,
what it means.
Yeah.
Yes. Elijah Craig is the only straight bourbon. All of them are the rye. So that's the Angel Envy rye as well.
Nice.
I just happen to have a lot of ryes right now. I really like the Basil Hayden's dark rye.
Yes.
I hadn't had that until I bought that bottle.
Oh
good
man,
stuff.
he is a man after my heart. I love the rye whiskeys. That's one of my favorite. Basil Hayden's is really good.
Yep.
And if anybody used to play Zork back in the day, want some rye? Of course you do.
So, off the subject, my favorite Basil rye was the first rye that they did, which was the limited release, which had a light green label, not the dark green that they have now. It had a light green label. And I bought it, and it was really good. And I bought every bottle I could find, including the 3 cases from my local liquor store that had it in the back.
Oh, so that's different than the one I had
Yes.
at Christmas time?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
But that's long gone now.
Yeah, I know.
It's long.
Tends to happen.
But the memory
all 3
remains.
cases, yeah, all 3 cases long gone.
There have been a lot of rainy days, huh?
Yes, there's been a lot of Tuesdays.
A lot of sunny days. Yeah,
Been
Tuesdays, Wednesdays.
a lot of days that end in Y.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
It all blends together in the COVID years.
it does.
So
So we're doing 5 questions now. We're kind of a hot mess.
we should. I was going to not bring it up this time.
Yes, and we can ask a great question number 4.
All right, Larry, I'm going to give it to you for question number 4.
Okay.
So, John, are you ready to play a slightly different version of 5 Questions with Security Weekly?
Yeah, you guys are throwing me. Like, having listened to the show, I had some idea what I was going to say, and now you're mixing the questions up on me.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Just question 4.
It'll be good.
3.
All right.
So, John, 3 words to describe yourself.
Oh, this is the one I didn't come up with a good answer for ahead
now
of time.
that's way more than 3 words. Start again.
Yeah.
Start again.
Scattered, energetic, and thoughtful.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Spoon.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Hi, my name's John, and I have squirrel.
Larry, I will turn it to you for
All right.
question number 4.
What is your favorite bourbon, and why is it Wild Turkey?
Very nice, very nice. I like the way it burns.
That's a good answer.
Ooh.
That's a good answer.
Good answer. Good answer.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead,
Live,
fictional, or
dead,
otherwise?
fictional.
Or otherwise.
Donald Trump
Get
and AOC.
Oh.
Wow.
Boom.
Complete dysfunction, right?
I was
And
gonna say,
billions of dollars to take advantage of.
Oh, wow. Man, I mean,
Fireworks.
that's like your favorite bourbon. You like the way it burns.
Can you imagine your siblings? I mean, just for a minute. Wow.
Way to go, John.
At any point, you could turn one of them against the other one to get whatever you need.
That's
hey.
that's some sound logic right there.
It is.
Really
know?
is.
He's a
Sound
thoughtful guy.
Yes.
That John. Who would have known?
Still extremely disturbing, but carry on.
John, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
All right, thank you for having me.
With that, we'll take a short break. Come back with the security news. Stay tuned.